In today's video, let's paint this beautiful quote together in the app Procreate. I'm going to show you how I did this step by step so you can follow along and make something that you love. If you're interested, please keep on watching. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. Today's video is the first video of 2025, and we're going to start this year of creativity with a quote. Trust the magic of new beginnings. And to make this really pretty, we're going to add some gold foil detail at the very end because why not? So for today's video, I am using a bunch of different supplies. I have them all listed in the pinned comment as well as the description, so check that out. Okay, so the first step, I'm going to open up the canvas that comes with the set that I'm using today. This is the second texture, so that's what that texture looks like. What I'm going to do is just turn off this, read this layer that has all the brush textures. And I'm going to make sure that I've tapped right up at the top, and I'm going to insert the coloring page as well as the color palette, which is available on Patreon. So now we have the coloring page right here, and then the color palette. For the coloring page, I'm just going to reduce the opacity because I'm not going to use a line art. So I'm just going to tap on N and then reduce the opacity to about 10%. 9–10%, that's usually what I like to do. And then I'm going to go to the paint here layer, which is between the texture overlay and the paper background, and let's start painting. So I'm going to go in and grab this color first and just press and hold on the screen to grab that color. And then I'm just going to go into the Amazing Watercolor brush pack, and I'm going to select Dark Outline B today. I want a little bit of that rough, bumpy texture and a little bit of a darker edge. So let me show you how to do one leaf. I'm using size number 20, and I always like to zoom in and rotate, and then I'm just going to start with the bottom and then kind of do the outline first, and then keep the pencil on the screen and fill it in. Really that simple. So if I turn the traceable off for a second, you can see it has a very subtle dark edge, and it has some color variation, but not too much because we are going to add more later on. So I'm just going to turn that traceable back on. And what I'm going to do now is just repeat this process with all of the leaves. I'm going to start out with this color here and then add a little bit of the other two. So at this point you can adjust the colors if you'd like, but if you are sure that you're not going to change the colors anymore, then what I would suggest you do is just go to Layers panel and merge all of these layers, because it just makes the next step a lot easier. So that's what I'm going to do. Just going to pinch, and all those layers are now one layer. So what we're going to do next is add some interesting color variation and watercolor effects onto these leaves. So these leaves already have some color variation, but it's meant to be very simple at this point. Now with the other brushes, you can create a lot more color variation. But in order to do that, what we will need to do is make this layer here a little more opaque. Right now it's pretty transparent because it is watercolor. And when you try to apply a clipping mask, which is what we're going to use on top of a transparent layer, it's a little bit of a struggle. So let me show you what I mean. So if I tap on plus and make this layer a clipping mask and try to add some interesting effects on top. So let me just grab my Apple Pencil, it was charging. So if I go to, let's say, brush number 32, which is meant to add more interesting color variation. So if I go into this color, maybe make it a little bit darker and add some color variation. So that definitely works, but if that's too pale for you, what you can do is make that bottom layer, your main layer, a little bit more opaque. And then your clipping mask, whatever you add in your clipping mask, will show up a lot more intensely. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. So all you want to do is take that bottom layer, swipe to the left, duplicate it. And now you can see that it's lost some of its watercolor luminosity. That's not the intent. What we're going to do is take that bottom layer, go to the adjustments panel, hue, saturation, brightness, and turn it to white. So now what we have is we have one layer up here that is transparent and one layer at the bottom which is white and is transparent. Now by merging two of these layers together, what's basically going to happen is that it's going to become a little bit more opaque. So then any clipping mask you have is going to show up a lot more. So let me show you. So remember we had our color right here in the clipping mask, it's a little bit pale. If that's okay, then you don't need to do the step. But if you want it to be a little bit more intense, once you've done this step, all you want to do is merge these two layers by pinching them, and then your clipping mask will be much more intense. So this is really up to you. This is an added step. You don't have to do this, but if you want your clipping mask layer to show up a lot more intensely, then this is a good idea, because we are going to add a lot more color variation to our leaves now in this clipping mask. So that's why I wanted to do that. So now that we've made our main layer a little less transparent, let's have fun in this clipping mask layer. So I'm just going to clear this, and then I'm going to start afresh. So what I want to do is just add a little bit of color variation to all of these leaves. I'm going to go in with that color. Maybe I'll change the hue a notch, maybe make it a little bit darker. And you can play around with any of these brushes. So if I use brush number 32 and make it small, so if I go to size 15, what you can do is really get very controlled areas, pockets of color like that. So you can go in and do that wherever you feel like it. You can add more color at the base. And if you use any of these brushes here, hard edge overlay A and B, I'll show you how that works. So if I press with heavy pressure, you'll get a lot of pigment. And then if I keep the pencil on the screen and lighten the pressure, you can get something like this. So you get kind of that effect that sometimes you see in watercolor where there's a slightly hard edge of pigment that's dried. So now is the time to have some fun and test out all of these brushes. This is really where you can play around and have some fun. So I think I'm done with this. I like the color variation and the watercolor effect. And now I think I am ready for the next step, where we are going to paint in the main part of the wreath, kind of like the stem. I'm going to go back to, actually maybe I'll use brush 16. And I'm going to try not to do too much overlapping. I'll start at the bottom here. So I'll show you what size I'm at. Size 3, so it's pretty small. And I'm going to try to avoid overlaps. So this brush just has a slightly different texture than the other brush that we used. So you see a lot more lights and darks with this one. I am ready for the next step. I'm going to tap on plus. And at this point, you can start to add details to the leaves, but I think I'm going to leave that to the end. What I want to do is start to paint in the butterflies. So brush 16, because it has a lot more color variation, it's much more suited to smaller objects. With bigger objects, that color variation can seem a little unnatural. So it is definitely suited to things like this. And then I'm going to go to that pigment bleed overlay brush. I'm using it at size 3. I'm just going to tap in. Actually, I can't even see it because I'm on the right color. I need to go to a darker color. I'm just going to tap in a little bit of color variation. And now let's work on the middle of each butterfly. So for the middle of the butterflies, I'm going to use a detail brush. I find that when you are really getting into the smaller details, some of the other brushes don't work that well. They weren't designed for details. So I'm going to use, I could use any of these, but I'm going to use brush number 37. And I'm just going to grab this color right here. Let's test it out. Yeah, I think that's nice. So I'm just going to, I don't want the color to be too harsh and too dark, but I think that is nice, yeah. And we can add more details later on, but for now I think we're good. So now let's move on to the most fun part, the trust, the magic of new beginnings, and all of the stars. Let's paint that in, and then we can apply gold foil, or you can choose to apply glitter texture too. So let's go to a new layer. So let's tap on the layers panel, tap on plus, and this is going to be the quote and stars. Quote and stars. Okay. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to color in everything with an opaque color, and then we will apply gold foil. So what I'm going to do is, the most opaque brush are these. These are the most opaque brushes in the set, shape maker brushes, and you can choose whichever one you want. I think for this one, I might choose shape maker B. It has much more precision and it has a little bit of texture, which I want. So you can pick any color that you want for now. You can always change it later on. So yeah, I'm on the right layer. I'm just gonna go down in size and let's test it out. Yeah. So all I'm going to do is start to create an outline for all of these letters and paint them in. Okay, so I am done painting in all of those elements. Now you could leave this as is. If you like that color, you can definitely leave this as is, but I want to add some gold foil. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the layers panel and I'm going to tap on plus and create a clipping mask. Now, if we tried to add gold foil to this right now, it would be a little bit difficult because the gold foil texture is slightly transparent, the one that I use. So what we want to do is take that quote and stars layer and turn it to white first. So I'm just gonna tap on that, go to adjustments, hue, saturation, brightness, and now it's pure white. So I'm going to pick this color right here for the gold. We may need to adjust it. I always tend to adjust colors. Now you can use any gold texture that you already have. I'm going to use one from my Amazing Papers brush pack. This is totally optional. You can use a glitter texture you get off an Unsplash, totally up to you. So I have a few gold textures here. I'm going to use brush number 40, and what I'm going to do is with the largest size, I'm just going to apply that gold all over. Right now I'm finding it's a little hard to read the quote. Like I want the quote to kind of look the same throughout. So I have two options with this gold foil. I can either duplicate it, or there's another trick. I'm just going to rotate the canvas and I'm going to apply the gold foil again. And what it does is it just makes the gold foil a lot easier to see. Now, if you like this color, the gold foil, you can leave it as is. But I find that the color might be a little bit too orange. I want to make it a little bit more muted. So our best friend, hue, saturation, brightness. You know what I do. I keep changing the colors. So go to hue, saturation, brightness, and let's reduce the saturation. Yeah, I kind of like that. I think this is nice. So that's the gold foil. If you don't want gold foil, you can add glitter. So you can find an image of glitter and use that in your clipping mask layer. But I like the gold foil. And now I think we're ready for the last step of this painting, which is to do the details. So we're going to tap on plus and rename to details. Now you can do the details in different layers. I'm just going to do everything in one layer. So I want to add details to the butterflies. And I also want to add some details to the leaves. And you can keep it simple or you can keep it a little bit more complex, totally up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference the traceable. So I'm going to bring back that traceable, maybe make it a little bit darker so I can see. Okay. So as you can see in the traceable, I have these lines here. So I'm just going to follow those lines. And I am going to do that with this color right here. I'm just going to grab that color. And I'm going to go back to the Amazing Watercolor brush pack. And there are a bunch of different brushes that you can use here. So you can use the ink bleed liner if you kind of like that pen look. Or you can use brush number 37, which we used for the butterflies earlier. Or if you want something more interesting, you can use a dry edge detail brush. And I'm going to start to add in the details. So let's see. I'm on the right layer. I think this is a little bit too thick. Yeah, I think that's nice. Now, if that's too dark, you can go with a lighter color too, but I think I want a little bit of contrast. So for the final detail, I want to add a little bit of pure white just to make things a little bit more whimsical. And now I'm going to do this with the ink bleed liner. I want it to be a little bit more polished, less texture for this. So we are done, and let's have a look at what we made together. So we have some beautiful watercolor effects. We learned how to use the gold foil, and we added some nice details with the dry brush, as well as the ink bleed liner. If you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments below, or you can send me an email, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful year. Bye!